The Tysons Gift podcast was created to promote the normalization of metaphysical and spiritual topics, particularly the reality that we are all eternal souls having an earthly experience. Obviously, this will cover a wide berth of topics such as animal communication, mediumship, the paranormal, past life regression, energy healing, you name it. Brandon hopes to entertain his audience with fascinating discussions with experts, as well as everyday folks who have metaphysical experiences and knowledge to share. The intention is to help make esoteric topics fun, relatable, and credible for audiences of all backgrounds. And here is your host of the Tysons Gift podcast, Brandon Wainwright.
Oh, sorry about that. I guess Pepper decided to start the show without me. Welcome to the Tysons Gift podcast on WLTK-DB Talk Radio. I'm your host, Brandon Wainwright. And this, of course, is Tyson. Did I call him Tyson? Her. This is Pepper Wainwright. And if you've read Tyson's Gift, my book, then you know exactly why she's an integral part of the show. So sometimes I slip and call her by her former name, if that gives you a hint of what I'm getting at here. So, okay, Pep. So you're going to go ahead and stick around for the show this time? Last time I went ahead and just kept her in my lap the whole show, and she seemed to be perfectly good with it. So I'm going to do that again. It's good moral support, huh? What do you think? I think she likes it. All right. We have a really good show for you tonight. We have a friend of mine named Kevin McDonald who is going to be on, and he's a friend because he too is he's actually more of a professional radio talk show host out in Seattle. I'm going to go ahead and read his intro real quick. This week, Brandon welcomes radio talk show host and spiritualist Kevin McDonald. Born and raised in Seattle, Washington, Kevin has been a star athlete, actor, voice actor, restaurateur, motivational leader, and transit operator. All of his experiences led Kevin to found Positive Talk Radio on KKNW 1150 AM in Seattle, as well as the My Independence Report podcast, both of which create content and feature guests with the mission to declare our freedom from hate, division, and fear, as well as to entertain and empower all who listen. And the way I know Kevin is he had me on his show when I was promoting Tyson's Gift originally, and he's just a really good guy, and he's a great host, puts people at ease right away. Let's go ahead and bring Kevin on now. Hello, sir.
Howdy. How are you?
Doing well. Sorry about that little stumble there. Courtney's here, and Courtney's making fun of me. She says, Peppa's here. No, you didn't. And Pepper winked. I bet she did. Yeah. So yeah, Pepper, as you know, Kevin, Pepper is actually the reincarnated version of Tyson. I don't know if I've actually said that on the air or not, but I always refer to the book in regards to why Pepper starts off the show with me each week. But she is so Tyson that sometimes I slip and call her Tyson. So, and I actually did it on accident tonight on the show. So worked out well.
And that dog loves you, and loves you more.
Yeah, not as much as I love her. Him, her.
I don't know. You're in Florida. I don't think you're allowed to say that there.
No, yeah. Touche. So thank God. Anyway. So I'm glad you're here, Kevin. Kevin, he's kind of an interesting guest for me because on the one hand, he's very spiritual. He's had a lot of really wild spiritual experiences throughout his time, but his show isn't so much an esoteric. His shows focus on everything as far as people making a difference and trying to make the world a better place. So his shows aren't necessarily all spiritually based, but his motivation and the whole purpose behind him creating the shows and the work that he does is spiritually based. And that's his own, based on his own experiences and his own spiritual paradigm that he's learned to live with, and all of that comes from his many experiences throughout his life. So, Kevin,
Sure.
so you've got KKNEW or KKN. There's a station in the Bay Area that I used to listen to. It's KKNEW or something like that, or KNEW. That's what it was. It's so similar. I want to say that all the time. I listened to it quite a bit over the years. But you've got KKNW.
Yep.
And then you've also got the My Independence Report podcast. So, and again, it's on 11:50 a.m. in Seattle. If any of you are out there, or the My Independence Report, it's that you can find that at myindependencereport.podbean.com. And if you don't want to listen to it on the actual radio station, on the terrestrial radio station, you can find Positive Talk Radio at positivetalkradio.net. And also, you can find him at KM Media. So like Kevin McDonald Media, kmmedia.pro. So
how inventive.
Just, yeah. Well, you've got quite a few places that you can be found at. So, I've kind of given you a little bit of an intro here, but tell us about yourself. I know you're used to being on the other side of the conversation, but you do have a very eclectic background. As Kevin was saying before we went on the air, that he has the type of background where people would say that he couldn't hold down a job, and I can relate to that because besides being a police officer for 12 years, I did many other jobs prior to that. So it doesn't mean you're flaky; it just means you're colorful. Okay, colorful and well-rounded.
That's right.
That's right. So tell us how it all, you started off, you were a star athlete, which I didn't know that until I read your bio. What did you play?
I played football and baseball, and was on many all-star teams, and was all conference in high school, and as a 178-pound nose guard.
Wow. So you had some vigor to you.
Yes, I was very quick, unlike today, but I enjoyed sports, and it was a lot of fun, and but I had to give up baseball because I couldn't hit a curveball at a certain level, and I'm too small for college football, and so I wasn't able to do any of that anymore. So, but I enjoyed that until my body broke down, and the hips had to be replaced. The thing that happens when you get old.
Yeah, well, especially when you had an active sports life when you were young, especially football.
Yeah, and I was a catcher for 10 years. So,
well, that's
from little league on.
That was my main position that I played too. I loved playing catcher, but that does take its toll on your body over time.
It does.
Just look at Buster Posey.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So then I did several jobs that I hated, and I couldn't find anything that I really liked to do until I went to work in a restaurant. And I love to be of service. I started as a graveyard dishwasher in downtown Denny's in Seattle. And then I became a host and a waiter and a cook and an assistant manager, and I opened restaurants for them and did all that. And then I spent, the next 15, 20 years as a restaurateur, and I became a general manager of several major properties and had 75 people working for me and all that kind of stuff. And but then I went into food service sales.
Did you ever have your own restaurant?
I did for a brief period of time, but that's hard work, and you got to be real young and energetic and really know everything about what you're doing. And unfortunately, I never had a bankroll because everything that I earned went to my family, so I was never able to take $200,000 and say, we're going to open up this great restaurant and we're going to have fun. So I wasn't able to do that. So I went into food service sales. I may be, and I don't think you know this about me, I may be the only chicken salesman you've ever met.
I don't know. I worked for a place called Sesame Chicken in high school.
Okay.
I sold chicken. My neighbor across the street called me the Chicken King.
There you go. They called me the what did they call me? They called me the big shot chicken guy. Because I traveled the country. I was a national sales manager for them and traveled all over selling, chicken to large restaurant chains like TGI Fridays and Old Spaghetti Factory and a bunch of them. And I did that for a while, and then my kids grew up and they got into their teenage years, so I decided I needed to come home and became a district sales manager for U.S. Food Service, and then everything changed.
And okay, so up to this point, you fairly conventional. I mean, interesting work, but conventional. You know,
Yeah.
not that. So at this point, spiritually, were you awakened, or was that something that was still kind of latent in you?
I grew up as a Missouri Synod Lutheran. I went to parochial school, grades 1 through 8. I went to Sunday school every Sunday. And so to answer no, I was not spiritually awakened. I didn't get what they were trying to tell me. It didn't make any sense to me. I kept on what they would preach on Sunday was like, yeah, but what about this? What about, and so, but I had no reference to go find out about any of it.
Were you? I mean, were you? Because I mean, I know Lutherans that are very spiritual and very, very devout, and they find they find enlightenment in their religion, at least in what they're looking for. So at that point, I mean, you grew up in it. Was it one of those things where it was just a typical kid, just doesn't not enough depth yet, insights to really be interested, or was it that some of the beliefs and the dogma of it just made it so you couldn't quite connect, or was it the people that the clerics that just weren't connecting with you on a level that you could really relate to? I mean, what?
I kept on asking in my own mind, why am I here? What am I here to do? What am I supposed to be doing with my life? And no one within including my mother, who's a fundamentalist Christian, and my brother, nobody could answer that question. Nobody could come up with, okay, these are the reasons why you're here, and this is what you're here to do. Other than you, my dad worked at Nordstrom for 30 years, and so you go to work, you raise a family, you work and you work, then you retire, and then you go play golf, and that's what their view of life was. And for me, it wasn't that way at all. I wanted something different, and the whole thing changed at Thanksgiving in 2002.
And how old were you at this point?
42.
42. Okay. It's interesting. I mean, I know we're going to get into your awakening and everything, but at Delphi, where I've mentioned Delphi in the air quite a few times.
Great place, I hear.
What's that?
Great place, I hear.
Yes, it's a wonderful place. But one of the heads of the school, Charles, he asked me when he first met me, so how old were you when you got on the path? And I said 40, 45, because that was when Tyson passed. And he goes, that is very typical. He says for most men that end up on this path, they're in their early to mid 40s. And that's, and I guess I don't know why that is exactly. I guess, looking for the meaning of life, looking for fulfillment, looking for what it's all about, and like you, like I can speaking for myself, I was asking those questions and having the same struggles and that you were having throughout my early life as well. Hey, real quick, I gotta show Pepper again. Courtney says, show her again. So hi.
That dog just loves you to pieces.
Are you enjoying being on screen? Are you enjoying that? No, not really. Okay, we can move on now. There you go, Courtney. I hope you enjoyed that, man. So okay, so you were 42 now. So I mean, you're Lutheran, so you were raised in it through school, through high school, yes.
Through high school, but as I aged out of my house, because my parents moved away when I was 18, And so I've been on my own since I was 18. I went because I was expected to go.
Yeah.
I never went because I felt enriched, and I never felt good about going to church and then feeling more powerful and enriched, and this is a great thing and all that kind of stuff. It was
It
kind
was
of like,
more like a checkbox for that particular week.
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And
I think
so
I think that's what it is for probably 90% of the kids out there.
well,
Unfortunately.
I'm a little bit older than you, and in 1968, 1969, the church went through what they called their charismatic movement. They had never introduced guitars into the church. They'd never,
Oh.
so it was always the organ playing songs that were 500 years old and that kind of thing. And I'm not kidding. The Bible
Yeah.
was written, or excuse me, the hymnal was written a long time ago, so we would do those songs. But so guitars were introduced along with some things like pot and other things, and everybody started getting everybody. So I was looking at that. I was a little younger, and I was looking at this, going, everybody was like high on the Lord. I don't know if you've heard that expression before. Everybody was high on the Lord. I hallelujah. I'm high on the Lord. Goodness gracious. So one day I sat in by myself and sat in a one of the schoolrooms that they had there, and I started just going, okay, I'm ready. Hit me. Make me high on the Lord. Make me. And I looked around and it was like, nothing's happening. So it wasn't, so I didn't feel it. It wasn't part. And come years later, I discovered what they were all about and what was happening in that. But it had nothing to do with the real reasons why they should have been there. But it was so I didn't feel connected to it at all, ever.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that Lutheranism is bad, like Catholicism or whatever. They all have their place, and there are people who
Yeah.
love it, and there are some really cool people that I know that are very committed. It just wasn't right for me.
It wasn't right. Yeah. To your point, Amara, I've had her on before, and I think I tried to put you in touch with her, but she's an amazing woman. And
I still need to get in touch with her.
I consider her one of my spiritual teachers, my main probably spiritual teacher. And what she pointed out to me not so long ago was, and this is something that I knew already, but it was a good reminder, is that, if somebody can be in the, because a lot of people consider the idolatry, all of Catholicism, and all the shaming and the guilt and all the stuff that goes along with it can be, it can deter people from spirituality too. It can be oppressive. But that said, for somebody that is truly seeking God and seeking that light and connecting to oneness, they might not articulate it that way, but that's what's in their heart. When they walk into a church, there's that type of spiritual sensibility it's pervasive there, even if it's not the majority. It's still something that's there all the time, because there's people coming and that's what they're seeking. Even if it's 25% of the congregation, that energy is there. And a lot of the clerics, that energy is there for them as well. So if you're going into it with a true open heart, trying to seek that, you're going to find it. You're going to connect with it. By the same token, if you're somebody that's seeking that by going out to the woods, you can find it. So the point is that to your point is that this isn't an anti-religious thing. It's more of a pro seeking the light thing.
Well said. I couldn't have said that better myself, because that's exactly what it is. It ain't enough. I want more. And it's not an anti-God thing either, because
No.
I'm a firm believer in God, spirit, the creator, whatever you want to call it. I'm a firm believer that they have a big presence in what we do here,
Oh
and
yeah.
we can get into that later too.
Yeah, it's connected to everything. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. And that includes more mainstream, if you want, dogmatic, if you will, religions. There's still the thing is that's the other thing that Amara said. I think it was in that same conversation, is that people are they're evolved to where they're at
Yes.
on their in their spiritual development.
Yes.
There are people out there that are on a different trajectory than me or you, and vice versa, and there are, if you're seeking the light, if you're seeking God, wherever that might meet you, there are, if you're truly seeking it and your heart is true, there are institutions, there are organizations, there are communities, there's literature, there are people that you can connect with, and energies that you can connect with to help you with that will meet you where you are. And you
Yes.
can't, there's no point. It's like with you in the Lutheran church, for I'm sure for some of your peers, certainly some of your family members, it was exactly what they needed. I'm sure
Yep.
but that's that, it met them where they were, and for you it wasn't a fit. But and when you're in a family situation, usually it's a one size fits all, right? I mean,
Well,
so
exactly. Well, as an
yeah.
example, meditation was of the devil,
Hmm. It- yeah.
and
See,
so
that's the problem, is the way I see it, is that oftentimes, and and if I do have a problem with organized religion, I don't have a problem, but one of the things that I see as a bit of a detriment is when people, when they knock down other, like, for me and you, meditation is something that's important, and it helps us to connect to God.
yes.
But like you said, there's people that believe in religions that believe that meditation is of the devil, and so that it yeah, it's divisive, and it keeps people, for us it's natural, and it works, and it brings us to the light. So they're keeping us from the light by pushing that.
And
And,
I
and
did
you
not
know
know anything about that, or psychic mediums, or any of that stuff until I was 42, because that was all considered the dark
the
arts
devil, yeah.
and the
Well,
devil.
so that's a perfect example of where, I mean, of course you have your beliefs, you got to believe what you believe. But that's one of the problems. That's why for me personally, spiritualism is a better fit, because it's so much more open and accepting of all things. You know,
Well, and I'll add to that, and to say that you have to learn to believe what your heart is telling you to believe, not what some other human being is
yeah,
saying to you.
that's right. That's 100%. Yep, and that's true spiritual connection. I just want to make some comments on. Courtney says she loves Amara. Absolutely. And let's see. And to her, she's right. And if we all believe the same thing, then why do certain ones hate on other ones? Well, that's why, because they get caught up in the dogma of it. This is the way it's got to be. This or versus this. And of course, if it's evil, if it's preaching hate and doing bad things to people, or obviously we have a duty to call those things out, but it's not supposed to be divisive. It's supposed to bring people together. Yeah, and she says we're all unique, and that is what makes us beautiful. Yep. And if we
Well,
can heal ourselves, they have nothing to profit off of. Well, the almighty dollar. Well, I mean, in some cases, yeah, I think that's probably true. A lot of times that is true. The money factor does come in, and unfortunately. So okay, so you're 42. Up to this point, even though you didn't necessarily buy in, you were deterred by the teachings that mediumship and meditation and these sorts of things were of the devil. So at age 42, what happened?
I was having Thanksgiving dinner with my family, And we were just chatting about this, that, and the other thing. And then it turned to religion.
Did the spirit of the turkey tap you on the shoulder and say, "Thanks a
Something
lot. Thanks a lot, you bastard."
yeah, for killing me. And by the way, he was dry too, so it wasn't really, it wasn't really a great dinner. But anyway, we started talking about life after death and when you die and what do you do, and of course my mother had it all planned out according to what supposedly the Bible says, and we get to go sit on a cloud. We're going to have a perfect body. We're going to be able to eat anything we want, not gain a pound. And I said, does that mean we still poop? And anyway, so
Getting a little advanced, a little bit of advanced Brando's potty humor of the weekend, huh?
Yes, sir.
Hey, you know what? Let me stop you. I was gonna wait on this, but since you broke the poop barrier, Pepper just now farted. She's not particularly flagellant most of the time, but she farted and then looked up at me. So, okay, on that note,
she watched. So anyway, so I was more confused than ever, and because that didn't make any sense to me at all. None, no sense. And so we left, and
this is when you're 42.
Yes, and so my wife and I at the time left and went to a friend's house, and it was after Thanksgiving and stuff, and so we're just having a beer, hanging out, and then this subject came up again, and I said, I really don't understand. Why am I here? What am I here to do? The Bible doesn't tell me enough. I don't know what special gifts that we all have that I'm supposed to be doing. And they looked at each other, my two friends. They looked at each other and said, we were having the same conversation. And I said, well, what do you want to do about it? And they said, well, let's get together and let's talk about this on a regular basis. And then we found a spiritual place to go to meet like-minded people. And my friend said to me, he said, I want you to do this for me. I want you to go to a metaphysical bookstore, and I want you to buy the first book that speaks to you. And I said, excuse me? A book's going to speak to me? And he said, yes. And so I want you to go there and I want you to buy that book. And so I went there and I looked around and by God, if Journey of Souls by Dr. Michael Newton didn't speak to me,
that's a good one.
Nothing ever did. And so and it was just brand new out at the time. And so Journey of Souls, it's about your past life. It's about what you do on the other side. And so I picked it up and bought it, read it. And that was the beginning of taking.
I should chime in here because I'm a big fan of that book too. Dr. Michael Newton he's no longer with us, but he's a PhD psychologist, a legitimate researcher. I want to say University of Virginia. He did lots and lots and lots of research on people who were through hypnotism,
hypnotherapy,
experiencing their lives between lives, and talking about that, and then they also getting into past lives. So these were all through hypnotherapy, discovering memories of these times between lives. And this is scientifically researched. This isn't just something that some guy made up. This is hard science. And so for those of you out there that might be, I don't know, have your curiosity piqued right now, it's Journey of Souls by Dr. Michael Newton, and it's pretty fascinating. So
I was fortunate enough to be able to interview him before he passed as well.
Oh wow! Oh, cool. That must have been. I would have been freaked out, but awesome.
Oh, it was an amazing experience because I knew his story.
Yeah.
And of course he for those who didn't know it, he had to tell it, but he literally put thousands of people in deep hypnosis, and the story was always, there were pieces of it, but it was always the same. So it wasn't like he was agnostic when he started this little thing.
Mm.
So he wasn't thinking spiritually. He wasn't thinking about taking people to the other side. It just happened over time. And that's one of the reasons why my belief, I don't call it a belief anymore. I call it a knowing, because I know what to expect. I know what's happening, and
Yeah.
to a much better degree than I ever thought that I could.
There's another, which I'm sure trying to Weiss, Dr. Brian Weiss,
Yes.
Weiss, MD. He's a psychiatrist, um, raised Orthodox Jewish, went to Columbia University for, I think he majored in math, and then he went to Yale for medical school, and it was hard science. Ended up a psychiatrist at Mount Sinai University in Miami, and ended up having a lab tech referred to him that had all these phobias, and he was very much just a traditional psychiatrist at this point. This is in the 70s, and um, he, after 2 years of treating this person, he wasn't getting anywhere, so he decided to try hypnotherapy. And then she spontaneously went back to past lives, and it ended up being, I think, like 30 different lives that he ultimately regressed her to. And the name of that book is Many Lives, Many Masters.
Great book.
And so these are two hard science, and for him it was particularly difficult because, culturally, certainly scientifically, within his professional community, he was deathly afraid of coming out with this information because he was afraid he was going to be ostracized and lose his career. And ultimately, he spent the rest of his career. I think he was in his like mid 30s or something when this all occurred, and he ended up spending the rest of his career doing research on this and treating people. And I think he still does work, but it's more teaching and seminars and things like that. But for those of you who are skeptical about past lives and things like that, read Michael Newton or Brian Weiss, and you'll be blown away. And these were, both of them were pretty influential on me when I first had my awakening. So anyway, continue. I'm sorry, keep distracting you.
No, that is
Yeah.
really important information for people to know that those books are out there. Because if you go with an open mind, open heart, it can change you. It changed my life. It really
Yeah.
did. Excuse me, just a sec. It really did. It changed who I was. And so we got into the spiritual thing, and we learned about meditation. And one day my friend came to me and he said, about 6 months in, and he said, we need to do a television show and talk about all of these things. And I looked into it, and we could do like a public thing, but didn't have any listeners, and it was
Wayne's
very
World.
uh,
Wayne's World.
yeah.
Could call it Kevin's World.
Exactly. And
Uh,
but we could do radio. We could buy time on a local radio station, and we could put up whatever we wanted to do. So we started with a show called Spirit Talk. A dear friend of mine now that I met in that period was a psychic medium. Her name is Kim, and it was the first time I'd ever been exposed to anybody like that, and it was just amazing what she could do. And I could verify that information and stuff. So we started doing this show, and then the universe stepped in. Well, it had already stepped in. I just didn't know it. And they stepped in to make it possible for me to lose my job, still have an income through unemployment. I didn't lose it. I actually quit, but in any event, and then I could go to KKNW.
this was when you were a bus driver, right?
Nope, I hadn't gone there yet. I had to go through some trials and tribulations first. But I went to KKNW, and they were flipping their format. They were a all news format, CNN, and now they were going to be a block programming format. So I could buy time on the show on the station. So I bought 10 hours a week, 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, and it cost me $2,000 a week to do that. Wow. And I thought that what I would do would be make that up in advertising and that kind of stuff. But I didn't. There was only me. I didn't
Yeah.
have a team. I didn't have a bunch of folks doing stuff, and so I was able to do it for 11 months. I met people like Neil Donald Walsh, Conversations with God, Gary Zukav, Seed of the Soul, Dan Millman, and many more that were the really were at the forefront of the spiritual community, and so I love doing that. I had some wonderful people that I met during that time, and I realized that I could make a difference. It's just like with the podcast that you're doing and or the radio show that you're doing. You're making a difference in somebody's life. You may never know who that is.
I'm hoping. Yeah.
No, I can guarantee it. You're not going to know who that is, but you are making an impact on somebody who needs to hear the message that you're giving when they need to hear it.
Yeah.
And so I did that, and then I had to give it up, and then I went through what I call my bad country music song period. My dad died, my dog died, I lost my house, my wife left me for another guy. I got sued for $50,000. I hit a trestle with a truck. I had to declare bankruptcy and all of that stuff over the next 3 years. So it's not like it was all puppy tails and Christmas. It was a lot of, and I almost was homeless.
Was that all that stuff precipitated? Did all that stuff occur that caused you to go off the air, or did you choose to go off the air and then all this came right after?
Well, what happened was, see, when you're buying time, every week they want to check. Every week they want to check. And so they came to me one day and they said, by the way, you owe us $10,000. And I said, that's a shame because I don't have $10,000 to give you. And they said, well, you're going to have to go off the air. So they gave me one last show.
That
And
was nice of them.
I thought so. I thought it was very, very gentlemanly of them. And so I announced to my little team. I had a couple people at that point working with me, and they all started crying, and it was a sad day for everybody. And then I announced a half hour in that the show was going off the air, and the phone lines filled up, and people who were listening to the show started calling in, and they were saying things like, I'm looking at a pile of books that I bought here because of your show, because of the guests you've had on. Another gal said because of the health aspects that we had, biochemists and we had naturopaths and stuff. She said, because of Jerry Armour, he was the biochemist, my health is much better now. And it's because of your show. I had breast cancer. Now the breast cancer is gone and I'm feeling much better. And it's because of your show that's happening. And then another gal called and she said, my name's Carol. I'm from Bainbridge Island. And I just want you to know that we listen to you every day and we are devastated. And I said, well, that's awfully nice of you. And she said, no, you don't understand. I'm an Alzheimer's caregiver. And we sit and we listen to you because you can still reach her. Every time she laughs, every time you laugh, she laughs. Every time
Wow.
so you really have making an impact in her life, and we will miss you terribly. And that told me that I was on the right path. You talked about the path earlier when you started your path.
Yeah.
That's when I knew that this is what I should be doing, and I should do it to the best of my ability and let the chips fall where they may. But in order to get there, I had to dump everything that I had that was part of my life. Not my dad dying or my dog dying, but my wife leaving, all my friends left with her, all the people that I knew before that, and so I was virtually alone because all the people that I'd been around, when you're married and you are a couple and you're around a bunch of couple friends,
Yeah.
they all went with her because I was the weird guy trying to do something really unique on the radio thing.
Yeah.
And so I was by myself. And until my friend Kim, who was, and this is part of the plan, my friend Kim, her partner was the supervisor at King County Metro, which is the bus company that runs King County in Seattle. And she said, why don't you become a bus driver? Never even considered it, never even thought about it. And Julie will help you get the job there. So I got the job there, was there for 12 years, and my sons tell me to this day that job saved our family.
Hmm.
And it was all by design. Not
Yeah.
mine.
It's just, it's amazing how sometimes when you get on, I hear this from people that are on this path, that especially people that are trying to be a voice and make a difference for other people and lead people to the light, if you will, that the the universe has a way of, maybe not the positive forces in the universe, but the universe has a way of trying to derail you when you're on that path, and it can be pretty brutal. um and so I know myself, we've talked about it off the air, but I know myself, I've gone through some pretty rough times myself of late, and some I can't help I can't help but wonder if it has to do, some of it has to do with trying to be a voice, and getting because what better way to, to silence people that are trying to be a compass and a light for people, to derail them and get them off track.
Well, not only that, but I've since learned this, is that you're a different man than you were then. You're vibrating at a different level
Hmm.
than you did then. And because of that, people that are not vibrating at the same level anymore, because as over time you end up being with people you're comfortable with and you all vibrate pretty much at the same level. But because you're vibrating at a higher level, you are now uncomfortable for them to be around. Or the things that are in your life change, and it's because you're vibrating differently than you used to.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know, I think I think you're right. I think that has something to do with it too. It's a not for the faint of heart. You
It's
know.
a But I got to tell you, it's you get me going when we start talking about it. It's a marvelous experience. I have met some of the greatest people on the planet, including, by the way, this guy. I don't know if you know him. His name is Brandon Wainwright, and he's a guy.
Yeah.
He's written this book, and he's doing a phenomenal job. And thank you for what you're doing.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I'm just an average Joe who's been blessed with a pretty wonderful experience to share, is all.
We
So
are all
that's right.
average Joes.
Yeah.
That's the thing, because there is I one of the things that I tell people is the day of the guru is dead. We
Mm.
do not need to follow. There's nobody that we need to follow other than ourselves and our heart. That's who we need to follow.
Well, and people are waking up in droves. There's definitely an awakening happening right now. So I think you're right. I think some, a few compasses, but not a guru. Don't
Right.
need a guru. You know.
If you need somebody that can put you on the path of self-discovery, like a Michael Newton or a Dr. Weiss. Those are the important people, but nobody should be telling you what to believe.
Well,
You
yeah,
have
and they don't either. They've simply had these amazing experiences and knowledge to share with people, to compel them. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Is like you said, if you read their material, you listen to them with an open heart and an open mind, and you connect with their messages, and just look at it for just the facts of it. It's like, you know, this is there's something going on here, and it's not necessarily what you've always been taught, and it's beautiful, and it has the implications behind it are huge in a
Yep,
positive way, you
yep.
know. So, but you're right, but they're not gurus. They're people that are influential because they're sharing facts that they've discovered, and that's how, what I consider, not on the, I don't think Tyson's gift is on that plane of reality, but it has, it does it, the experiences in it are real. It's a real true story, and if you read it with an open heart and listen, maybe it can make a difference to you. That's the whole idea behind it.
Well, I can guarantee you that it's true.
Yeah. Oh, it is true. I mean, I didn't. It's nonfiction. It's a memoir, so it's absolutely true. But, I mean, whether people take it that way or not, you got to be open. You got to be open-hearted and open-minded enough to take it in. But I will reiterate this. It is true. I am not lying. So in terms of I always like to get people like, what kind of spiritual experiences have you had? I mean, obviously you had a shift in paradigm, and you were compelled by this information, but have you had any personal experiences with spirit that were like, whoa, that was tangible and life-changing?
In October 2 years ago, my older brother passed away with stage 4 lung cancer.
I'm sorry.
And thank you. And my sister called me. He was on the decline for a while. And my sister, it was a Thursday morning at like 8:15. My sister called me to let me know that he had lost consciousness the day before. And so, but she let me know that the hospice had officially declared him gone. And so we talked for a minute, and I laid my head down on my pillow and just kind of drifted off to sleep again. Because I'm retired now, so I'm not a real early person. And I had a dream. And the dream was that there was a party going on. And there were 30 or 40 people in this room. Young, vibrant, happy, excited because somebody had just come home. Now, my brother had auburn hair that before he lost it with the chemo and all that kind of stuff. He had auburn hair, that brown auburn, and it was very distinctive. And his hairstyle was very distinctive, and he had a full beard. And I remember coming through this crowd of a bunch of people was this guy who was young again, going through the crowd, and everybody was high-fiving and congratulating, and they were having a great time. And then he sat down at a couch, and he had 3 girls that had their arms around him and were welcoming him back and stuff. And if you ever had a real dream, I mean a real vision type dream, this is what that was. This
Yeah.
was not me thinking about it. It was, I had no earthly idea, but I do know that I believe that happens to all of us. There's that when we go home, there's a party.
Yeah.
And our friends are there. So that was one of many. When John Edward was on the show, I kind of set him up. But for those of you, can I tell the story real quick? Do you have time?
Yeah. Yeah. Go for it.
I interviewed John Edward. Now, John Edward is a psychic medium. He did
Yeah.
Crossing Over and a bunch of other stuff. And one of the things when you interview him, he'll say, okay, I'm not going to interview anybody that is on staff, or I'm not going to read for anybody that's on staff or part of the show or connected with the show in any way. And he does that he doesn't want to get people in trouble if somebody's planning on leaving the job, for one. But that's just kind of his where he draws the line. But because I wasn't sure if I was going to get enough calls, I invited certain people that wanted to be read by him to call in. So like I arranged it, didn't tell him. He had no idea. And one of them was my sister, the first one. Huh. And so for those of you who do not believe in psychic mediums, I will tell you here, I will stand on this till the day I die. You're wrong.
Yeah.
Psychic mediumship is real. And so we talked for a while, and then I introduced my sister. We have a caller from Seattle, and her name is Karen, and here you go. And so John started reading for her. And because I know my sister, we've been together for 60 years, 65 years at that point. I know the family story. So I knew when he was talking to her and he said, and this happened to her. That happens to a lot of people. They get overwhelmed with the information, and so
Yeah.
they forget it, or they don't recognize that what he's saying. I'll give you an example in a second, but he talked about my grandfather's death, that he died of stomach cancer. Talked about my dad's death, that he died of lung cancer. My other grandfather that died of a heart attack. He accurately picked those folks. He then told my sister that May was an important month for her. Her birthday is in May, and her grandchildren are both born in May, and her daughter's born in May. And so he accurately picked that. And then he said, and by the way, you have got a relative living who is the name R. It starts with the letter R. And she says, well, I have my brother's name is Randy, and she had forgotten that her husband's name is Roger.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I knew in talking with him, and because he was in New York, we're in Seattle, and we did not meant to talk about anybody or anything at all. He had no way of knowing who she was, and there's no way that he could have picked that by doing a cold reading, just on the radio, doing a cold reading or anything like that. So I know for a fact that those people. And I want to interview your friend that you mentioned to
Mara.
me.
Yeah.
Mara.
Yeah. She's awesome. She's wonderful. You know what you said about people getting overwhelmed. I write about it in Tyson's Gift, but the first time I went to an actual medium, not an animal communicator, but a regular medium, Lisa Silverman, that was my uncle, my aunt, my grandma, and Tyson all showed up. And my aunt had a son named James. While I was connected to her, Lisa's like, is there anybody connected to her with the name, with the J? Because I'm seeing J and like neon lights, J. And I was like, no. And then she brings it up again later, J. And then she the phone rings. She's, I'm sorry, because it had rung a couple times. I got to get this. So while she went and got the phone, I'm sitting there thinking, J. I was like, J. What the heck? Why did that not come to my mind? I mean, come on. So, and then there was another thing that happened too with another reading that I had where two of my buddies that had passed away from childhood, not during childhood, but they were childhood friends. And this is pretty remarkable, and maybe it'll pique your interest to read the book. But this was in the kind of the midst of my awakening. I actually went and got Many Lives, Many Masters by Brian Weiss. And then I'm trying to remember the name of the book, but it's a James Van Praagh book. I think it was one of his first books. But I got the parents of these two friends separate. I got them the copies of the book because I thought it might, especially one of them in particular, really, I thought it helped bring them some peace about the death of my friend and their child. And would you know that a couple months later, I went and had another reading with Lisa, and those two guys came through. Yeah. They were the two people that came through in that session for me. I didn't realize the correlation of the books that I'd brought to their parents. I didn't remember that until after the session. I was driving home, and I was like, no freaking way. So, they clearly were in, this was something they were involved in, obviously. Okay. So Todd had told me that we got to boogie out here a little bit earlier tonight than normal. So, ready. Let's real quick. Todd, go ahead and hit it. Okay. For those of you who are ready to go, get out of here now. Otherwise you're going to hear some toilet humor.
Sometimes it's soft, sometimes it's runny, sometimes it stinks, but it's always funny. It's Brando's Potty Humor of the Week.
I can't believe you actually thought of that. Anyway, you go first.
You know what? For the sake of time, I'm going to let you go, and then we're going to have to wrap the show up. So go ahead and tell your story.
Heard this from the Home Depot. A Lady comes to a security guard and this is a true story. Look it up. Lady comes to a security guard and says, "There's a man. He's got a bomb. He's going to set it off in the men's room." And so the security guard calls the police, and the police come and they interview her, and she points out the guy who's no longer in the restroom, and they go talk to him, and he says, "What were you doing in the restroom?" And he said, "Well, all I was doing was giving them fair warning that I was going to blow the place up here in a moment." And so they almost arrested him for taking his shit, quite frankly.
All right, I love the way you put the punchline. That's awesome. Good stuff, Kevin. Good stuff. You delivered that better than I could have. That was on par, on par with me. Right on the mark. I love it. I love how we're ending this show tonight. Okay. All right. So real quick, some quick announcements. One, the show is going to be moving to Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Central because I'm having a schedule change, and so I having to make it a little bit later so I can ensure that I'm going to be able to get to the show after work. Also, if you're interested in any of what I have to offer, TysonsGiftHealing.com or the book TysonsGift.com. And again, I want to, Kevin, do you want to give out any of your information before?
All I'll say is go to positivetalkradio.net and you can find out all about me and the show. And I end every show with this: be kind to one another because each other's all we've got.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on. It was a pleasure. And I hopefully, we'll do this again.
I would love to. It's fun to make you laugh.
Oh yeah, that was a good one too. Great way to end. So again, Positive Talk Radio. If you want to check out Kevin, and Tuesday nights from now on, 8 p.m. Central for Tyson's Gift Podcast. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next Tuesday at 8 p.m. Central, right here on WLTK-DB. Good night, everybody. Thanks again, Kevin.
Thank you, guys. Have a great night.
The truth is here and now on WLTK-DB Talk Radio at WLTK-DB.com.